Hi, my name is Emma. I remember the first time I wanted to learn English. It was a rainy afternoon, and I was sitting in my room, feeling so frustrated. I had moved to a new school, and everyone there spoke English so easily. I didn't understand much. Every time I tried to talk, my words came out wrong. My cheeks would turn red, and I would feel like crying. My mom saw me one day, sitting on my bed with tears in my eyes. She sat down next to me and said, "Emma, I know it's hard, but you can practice at home, and soon you will be speaking better every day." I looked at her, hopeful but unsure. "How can I practice at home?" I asked. She smiled and said, "Start with the little things. When you wake up, say good morning to yourself in the mirror. Look at your reflection and speak, even if it's just a simple word." So, I did that. Every morning, I would stand in front of the mirror and say, "Good morning, Emma." At first, it felt silly, but slowly, I began to feel more confident. One day, my brother, James, came home from school and said, "Emma, why don't we play a game?" I was curious. He explained that we would take turns naming objects in English. If we got stuck, we had to look them up. It became our favorite game. We laughed a lot, especially when we tried to name difficult things. I also started writing simple sentences. My name is Emma. I like dogs. I go to school. They were small, but each sentence felt like a victory. My mom would read them and give me a high five. Once, I had to speak in front of my class. My heart raced and my hands shook, but I remembered all the practice I had done. I stood up, took a deep breath, and started speaking. I made a few mistakes, but it was okay. My teacher smiled at me. After class, my friend Lily said, "You did so well. I can see how much better you're getting." At night, when everyone was asleep, I would listen to songs in English. I didn't understand all the words, but I loved the way the singers made me feel. Slowly, I began to understand the lyrics, and I would sing along, even if my pronunciation wasn't perfect. One afternoon, while playing outside, I met a girl named Sarah. She was new in our neighborhood and didn't speak much English. We sat on the swings, and I noticed she looked sad. "Are you okay?" I asked. She nodded, but didn't say much. Over time, we became friends, and I would help her with her English, just like I had practiced. I learned that English wasn't just a language, it was a way to connect with people. Sarah and I would laugh and sometimes even cry together when things got tough. But through our struggles, we helped each other. My dad, who travels a lot for work, once brought me a small notebook. He told me, "Write a new word every day. Even if it's a small word like cat or blue, you'll see how fast your vocabulary grows. I took his advice, and soon my notebook was filled with words. There was one evening when I felt like giving up. "It's too hard," I whispered to myself. I sat in the corner of my room, tears streaming down my face. My mom came in, hugged me tightly, and said, "Emma, learning is a journey. Every step you take brings you closer to your goal." That night, I dreamed of standing on a stage, speaking English fluently, with people clapping and smiling. I woke up feeling a little better and decided I wouldn't give up. One trick that helped me was to label things around the house. I would stick a piece of paper on the fridge that said fridge, or on my bed that said bed. It was fun. And soon, I knew the names of everything around me without even trying. I also began reading short stories. At first, I chose books with lots of pictures and simple sentences. As I got better, I moved on to longer stories. I loved the feeling of finishing a book and understanding most of it. Sarah and I often practiced together. We would take turns reading aloud, and sometimes we laughed when one of us made a funny mistake. One day, she told me, "Emma, you helped me so much. I feel more confident now." It made me happy to know that I could help someone else. English wasn't just something I was learning for myself. It was something I could share with others. One morning, I had to give a presentation in class. I was so nervous, but as I spoke, I saw my teacher nodding and smiling. When I finished, the whole class clapped. I almost cried, but this time it was because I was proud of myself. In the evenings, my family would sit together, and I would tell them new words I had learned. Sometimes I would make up stories in English and share them with everyone. My parents would listen closely and always tell me how proud they were. One time, I was at the store, and the cashier asked me something in English. I was so excited that I understood her. I replied confidently, and she smiled at me. It was a small moment, but it felt like a big win. I also found that watching movies with subtitles helped me a lot. I would watch a movie in English with English subtitles, and it was like magic. I could hear the words and see them at the same time, making it easier to understand. Every night before bed, I would think about how far I had come. Learning English was tough, but it had also given me so many beautiful moments. It helped me make new friends, made me more confident, and even made me laugh more. There were days when I still struggled, but I knew that with every word I learned, I was one step closer to speaking fluently. My journey was far from over, but I was excited to keep going. As I close this story, I want to remind you, whoever you are, that learning something new, like English, takes time. But with every little practice, you get better. Even on the days when it feels impossible, just remember you are making progress. I can still remember a particular evening when I almost gave up. I was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to read a paragraph from my English homework. The words seemed to jumble together, and no matter how many times I read it, I couldn't make sense of it. My frustration grew, and tears filled my eyes. I pushed the book away and rested my head on the table. "Why is this so hard?" I whispered, feeling defeated. Just then, my little sister Mia came into the room. She saw me crying and asked, "What's wrong, Emma?" I looked at her, and for a moment, I thought about telling her that she wouldn't understand. But instead, I told her the truth. "I'm trying so hard to learn English, but it's not working. I feel like I'm never going to get it." Mia, who was only 7 at the time, looked at me with her big, curious eyes and said, "Emma, do you remember when I was learning to ride my bike?" I nodded. I remembered that day very well. Mia had fallen over and over again, but each time she got back up and tried again. "At first, I thought I would never learn," Mia said, sitting beside me. "But you told me to keep trying, and I did. And now I can ride my bike really well." She smiled at me, her small hand resting on mine. "You just have to keep trying, Emma." Her words, simple yet so wise, hit me deeply. She was right. Learning English was like learning to ride a bike. You fall, you get frustrated, but if you keep trying, eventually you get better. I wiped my tears and gave her a hug. "Thank you, Mia. You're right. I won't give up." The next day, I felt a little lighter. I knew the road ahead was still long, but I had the courage to keep going. I practiced more, and every time I made a mistake, I reminded myself that it was okay. Mistakes were part of the process. One tip that helped me a lot was speaking English out loud to myself. I would describe everything I was doing. "I am brushing my hair, I am putting on my shoes." It felt strange at first, but over time, it became natural. Speaking out loud helped me hear the words and get comfortable with them. There was another moment I will never forget. My school had a talent show, and my friend Sarah, the one I had been helping with English, wanted to participate. She came to me one day, looking nervous. "Emma, I want to sing a song in English, but I'm scared. What if I forget the words?" I smiled at her and said, "Do you remember when I had to give that presentation in class? I was so scared, but I practiced a lot, and you helped me too. We can practice together." So, every afternoon after school, we would sit in my room, and Sarah would sing her song while I helped her with the pronunciation. It was hard at first, but as the days went by, she got better. The night of the talent show, Sarah stood on the stage, her voice trembling at first, but as she sang, her confidence grew. By the end of the song, The whole audience was clapping. After the show, she ran up to me, tears in her eyes. Emma, I did it. Thank you for helping me. I hugged her tightly and whispered, You did it because you believed in yourself. I'm so proud of you. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about how learning English wasn't just about me anymore. It was about helping others too. It was about sharing what I had learned and growing together. One of my favorite ways to learn new words was to keep a small notebook with me wherever I went. Anytime I heard a word I didn't know, I would write it down. Later, I would look it up and try to use it in a sentence. I remember one day I wrote down the word challenge at the time. I didn't know what it meant. But when I looked it up, I realized that learning English was my challenge. But it was a challenge I was willing to face. I also started using English in my daily life more and more. At the grocery store, I would try to read the signs in English. When watching TV, I would turn on the English subtitles. Slowly, without even realizing it, I was improving. One day, my mom surprised me with a new book. It was a little more advanced than what I was used to, but she believed I could read it. Take your time, she said. Even if it takes a while, just keep going. I spent many afternoons reading that book. There were moments when I felt stuck, but I didn't give up. I used a dictionary to help me with the difficult words, and after a few weeks, I finished the book. It was a small victory, but it made me feel like I could conquer anything. Another thing that really helped me was talking to people in English as much as I could. I remember the first time I ordered food in English at a restaurant. My heart was racing, and I was so nervous, but when the waiter understood me, I felt a surge of confidence. It was a small moment, but it made me realize how far I had come. There was another emotional moment that I'll never forget. One evening, I was helping Sarah with her homework, and she suddenly started crying. I'll never be good at this, she said, wiping away her tears. I sat beside her, feeling her pain, because I had felt it too. Sarah, you're doing amazing. I know it's hard, but you're not alone. I'm here with you, and we'll get through this together. She looked at me, her eyes red from crying, and nodded. We spent the next hour going through the homework slowly, and by the end, she was smiling again. Helping her reminded me of all the times I had felt like giving up. But each time, someone had been there to encourage me. English wasn't just about learning words, it was about building connections, sharing struggles, and celebrating victories together. Every day, I learned something new. Some days were hard, and some were easier. But every day, I got better. The road was long, but I wasn't walking it alone. As I sit here now, writing this, I want you to know that if you're learning English, you're doing something brave. You're taking on a challenge, and with each small step, you are getting closer to your goal.